Hello everyone and welcome to Burnout Talks. Today's topic is the Imposter Syndrome. With me, I'm having Clare Josa out of the UK. Hello Claire, nice to have you here.
Hi, Georgi. It's lovely to be here with you today.
It's all our pleasure having you. Being very honest about it, I've been waiting for this over a month now. Claire is fairly busy. The first time I stumbled upon her, I think it was by incident finding her new book and got immediately inspired, looked her up. It was a little bit stalkery involved. Checked all her references. It was so motivating to get her on the show that I think it was almost midnight when I initially looked her up. I'm not sure anymore. It's such a bliss having you here. Thank you so much for making the time. So, Claire, without any further ado, why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. So I've spent the last 20 years specializing in imposter syndrome. That is the secret fear of being found out as a fraud or not good enough, even if you actually are. But prior to that, I've got a master's degree in mechanical engineering in German, and I spent 10 years specializing in engineering and Six Sigma. Then I became head of market research at one of the world's most disruptive brands. And then I was really studying psychology and things like NLP. I became a certified trainer, and I realized I needed to make a bigger difference than I could in somebody else's company. And so in 2003, I set up my own business, and it's been an incredible journey and getting to make difference in thousands and thousands of lives.
Oh wow, so many questions popping up into my mind. All right. Who are you nowadays? We got the background already.
Hmm. So nowadays, my team and I, we're looking at taking the stuff that we've been doing traditionally through courses, through mentoring, through masterminds, and turning it into something that people can consume on their phone. So our next big step is actually we're launching the Natural Resilience Method app so people can clear imposter syndrome, burnout, and toxic resilience in just 5 minutes a day. Who am I as me? I'm getting time to follow more of my other passions. I've been studying Italian, for example. I'm part Italian. I'm a mother of 3 boys, one of whom's about to go to uni next year, which is a really big, scary, life-changing moment. And when I'm not working, I love reading. I love chatting with fascinating people because most people really are fascinating. And my big passion is actually gardening, organic vegetables and fruit gardening. Just getting in there and sowing a seed. And it still blows my mind that like a tiny little seed can become a massive broccoli plant. Yeah, that potential held in something so small. And that really resonates with the way I love to work with people as well, is how can we unleash the potential that we've been keeping in the dark, keeping us stuck dreaming big, but playing small.
Lovely, thank you. And one minor aspect I wanted to ask you, what gets you out of the bed in the morning?
Apart from having to take the kids to school. um, creating. Sometimes I love doing the detail and the admin and the kind of way you can tick lots of things off a list, but it's creating. When my youngest son was born, he's now 11. I was on my maternity leave, if you ever get maternity leave when you're running your own business. And after a couple of weeks, I was going just crazy, pulling my hair out. I needed to create. And so I wrote my first book on maternity leave while he was asleep. It's in my blood. If I'm not pushing boundaries and stretching myself and learning and growing and finding new ways to solve problems, then I just stagnate. So it's the thought that I get to create every single day gets me out of bed.
Got it, got it. Um, let's jump straight into the imposter syndrome, as you've mentioned it a couple of times already. I'm quite curious to find out what is it actually?
So it is the secret fear of being found out. Yeah, is you might actually feel quite confident in general, but there'll be triggers that mean you're sitting there thinking, what if they realize they made a mistake choosing me? Who am I to be doing this role or making this difference? And when I work with clients and students on this, I talk about it being the secret fear of others judging us the way we're judging ourselves. Even though the outside world thinks you've got your act together and everything's fine, at 3 o'clock in the morning, you are absolutely crippled by the internal dialogue on this what if thing, this catastrophizing, this what if they realize that I'm not as good as I should be?
Maybe it's a good moment to show some vulnerability also on my end as well. As I was preparing for our talk, I had read in a couple of articles and even halfway through a book. And it felt, I don't know, it felt so scary. I found myself in so many of the chapters. Yeah, maybe it's like a psychology student in the first semester, but it somehow resonated on so many different levels.
And it's, I'm grateful to you for sharing that. This is something that is very, very widespread. So in our most recent research study, which we published in April this year, and it's run over the last 2 years since the start of the pandemic, we found that 62% of respondents are struggling with imposter syndrome daily or regularly to a level where it's going to be impacting their work and their well-being. And we also found it's one of 2 core predictors of burnout in the workplace. So it's very, very common, but we hide it because we feel ashamed. We don't want anyone to know that this stuff's going on inside our heads. So we push it down, we push on through, we self-sabotage, we avoid the opportunities to shine. We don't take action on our dreams because at a deep level, we want to stay safe. So we think we're staying safe, but actually what imposter syndrome is doing is stopping that broccoli seed from growing. Yeah, it's stopping us turning our ideas and our dreams into a reality that can allow us to have more impact.
Really love that metaphor for the broccoli seed. All right, but let's point to the elephant in the room. All we've been discussing sounds dangerous and all, but hey, it's only applicable to women, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Based on our discussion earlier today.
This is so super common, okay? So in our research studies, in both of them, we found that the level of imposter syndrome is almost identical for male and female respondents. It's just they handle it very differently. So people think it's a girl thing because the original research study only had women in it. That was just the way it was set up. Future research studies by Clance and Eames also included men and found they struggled with imposter syndrome too. And what we found in our research is that women were 20 times more likely than men to talk about it, to ask for help, to share how they were feeling. The male respondents were 5 times more likely than women to push those emotions and anxieties down and then to turn to drugs, alcohol, and medication to help them to cope. So because we talk about it more, and because you've got women's networks organizing events on it, it's seen as a woman-only thing, but it really isn't. And if you talk to a man who's experienced imposter syndrome, it's equally real for him as it is for any of his female colleagues or friends who are running it.
Funny, the last week only we were having a bit of a chat with Jimmy Westerheim from Oslo, the founder and CEO of the Human Aspect. And one of the things that we touched based on was exactly this, how sometimes maybe we got even pre-programmed during our childhood when people said to us, hey, behave like a big man, don't cry, or men don't cry, or don't be emotional, and so on. So at the end, the quintessential there was, okay, actually, we are equally vulnerable, but we are much worse off discussing. And if you don't know, if you don't have the vocabulary, what we were chatting in our pre-warm up, then how can you actually pinpoint it? And I guess this doesn't really solve it in any way.
Well, it helps for men to understand that they're not alone. So I remember about 15 years ago having a chat with a male friend who was in a board. He was a member of a board of a company. He was C-suite level. And he was talking about a board meeting that he'd just been to. And it was a company where at that senior level, it was quite alpha male, quite competitive, fairly aggressive, very direct and blunt. And he said he just talked up in the middle of the meeting and just said, we're all making the wrong decision here. We've got groupthink running. And he talked about imposter syndrome and asked how many of the people in the room felt that way without giving it a name. And all of them just kind of like looked at their feet and then looked at him and sort of nodded. Pretty much everybody in the room was running this fear of being found out as not good enough. And so because that triggers the fight, flight, freeze stress response, they'd all gone into fight, which is why they were fighting each other, which is why there was conflict. And as soon as they realized they all felt the same way, they were able to have a drama-free discussion and actually move towards the best decision.
Right. And this brings me to the next question. Are there any personal traits that make a person more likely or more risky towards developing the imposter syndrome?
So we found that only about 11% of people never get it. Okay. And people who never get it tend to be the people who don't have what I call the inner drama gene. They just do stuff. They really don't feel the fear. They don't overthink. They don't get emotional about their actions. And that really is quite a small number of people, 1 in 10. 9 out of 10 of us, if something goes wrong, we'll start overthinking. We will what if, we will catastrophize, we will rerun it in our heads. And anybody who's in that kind of space needs to look out more for imposter syndrome, because it's that self-talk that drives the behaviors. It's actually stuff below the surface that drives the self-talk, but the self-talk makes it so much worse. And if I look at the people I know who have never run it, they are totally drama-free in their self-talk. They simply aren't wired that way. And that's absolutely fine. Where it gets tricky is if they're then managing somebody with imposter syndrome because they can't relate. I had exactly this, in fact, recently. Whenever I give a keynote talk to an organization, for example, I get people to fill in my scorecard first so that they've got their imposter syndrome score, they've got an action plan in their hands, in their hard drive already. And they can also ask me questions and give me feedback on their experience of it. One of them is a manager at the company. And this person actually wrote in their feedback, how have you self-sabotaged? This whole thing is a waste of time. If people would just stop being so self-obsessed and go out and maybe volunteer to help others, they wouldn't feel this way. So you can imagine this person scored really low. They're not running imposter syndrome, but it also meant they couldn't relate with people who were. And they didn't, in that example, have the emotional capacity and the empathy to be able to say, but I can see this is real for my team members. So the likelihood of someone going to that person as their line manager and saying, hey, boss, can I have help with this, is sub-zero.
Is there anything we can do about that?
Yeah, it's running line manager trainings in companies, for example, giving them the tools to be able to open up the discussion, and also helping them to see through hard data, because that will often be what convinces someone this is what it feels like for your team members who are struggling with this. This is not something where if we just get rid of the label, it's going to go away. They need help with this, and it's okay for them to ask for help. It's not self-obsessed, and it can be completely crippling.
Got it. And having read through some of your materials, you seem to mention the 4 Ps. What is that about?
So when you want to look for warning signs of imposter syndrome, we've developed from the research studies the 4 Ps model. These are 4 behaviors that are very common if someone is running imposter syndrome. And imposter syndrome can be dormant for years. Yeah. I remember in my job as head of market research, I never had it once, even though on paper I didn't have the qualifications for the job. But in my engineering role, where I'd got a first and I was getting outstanding appraisals, I had it every day. And then something will come up that just triggers imposter syndrome, that kind of our bridge of coping strategies we create isn't enough. So the warning signs to look for in the 4 Ps model are perfectionism, procrastination, project paralysis, and people pleasing. With these 4 Ps, so perfectionism, setting incredibly high standards and writing it off as fluke, if you actually meet them. Procrastination, it's not all about cute cat videos. It's filling our time with busyness. So we're constantly in action, but not making progress towards whatever that goal or task is. Project paralysis is the kind of, I can't see it, rabbit in the headlights, until we can use the adrenaline of the deadline to push on through and get it done. And people pleasing, taking on things that aren't really our responsibility, so we feel like we belong in the tribe, changing our priorities after every single meeting, not speaking up with our opinions because we're scared of offending people. When you look at the 4 Ps, all of them you can reduce by clearing imposter syndrome. So what you're looking for is changes. Someone who wasn't previously running perfectionism, say, who suddenly starts working super long hours and being really critical of mistakes. Some people run all 4. Some people, it might just be 1. But they're a really useful and simple early warning sign to look for if somebody's running imposter syndrome and you're not able to actually have that conversation with them, if all you've got is their outside behavior to go on.
Got it. And at some point you mentioned the scorecard. Is there a way for me to actually assess my standing?
Yes, there is. A big bugbear of mine is people confuse imposter syndrome with self-doubt. So self-doubt is about what we can and can't do. It's our skills and our capabilities. Imposter syndrome is much deeper. It's about who we think we are. And you need to use different tools. Yeah, so self-doubt, classic coaching and mindset work will make a big difference. With imposter syndrome, it's nowhere near enough. You need to work much more deeply. So we used the 2 research studies to create a research-backed quiz-style assessment that you can take to get a rough indication of your imposter syndrome score. Which of the 3 hidden drivers needs to be your priority? And you get a personalized action plan. So you can start making a difference on it today. And I've got a version of that everyone watching can go and do over at clarejosa.com/Digiburn. And that is there for you as my gift.
Lovely. So everybody watching, we have switched on also the ticker. If you're curious about your current situation regarding the imposter syndrome, go follow the link and check out your results. Again, from my personal standpoint of view, I'm so curious. Just after we finish with our talk, I'm going to take a look because preparing and reading for today made me ask myself a lot of questions around that imposter syndrome aspect. Cool. So we've covered a little bit more professional or the expert side of things. However, we always ensure and focus on bringing forward the actual personal aspect of things, and basically leading in as an example, empowering people to figure out things, maybe recognize themselves in the shoes of others, and most importantly, take action. So with this short intro, Claire, I was actually about to ask you, can you tell us a bit about your personal story with the imposter syndrome?
Absolutely. So the first time I realized I had it was in my engineering career. And I lived in constant fear that today will be the day they realize I'm not good enough. Today will be the day they realize that somebody else should be the senior engineer or the Six Sigma black belt. Today is going to be the day they realize I'm a complete fraud and I've pulled the wool over their eyes, and I even managed to hoodwink the examiners on my degree into giving me a grade I didn't deserve. And when I left engineering, it disappeared. As I said before, when I was head of market research, I never experienced it once. Then when I set up my own business, I was working with people who had these behaviors. I didn't have a name to give to it at that point. And I knew that despite me having the most incredible toolkit as a coach and a leadership development trainer, it was not touching the sides. I needed to do something completely different. And this is when I realized it's an identity level issue. It's about who we are. So I talk about the imposter syndrome gap between who we see ourselves as being and who we think we need to be to achieve something. And because we can't always run away, we build what I call the bridge of coping strategies over that ravine to be able to succeed despite it. Now, probably the last time, touch wood, I remember having imposter syndrome was about 7 years ago. I was publishing this beauty. There you go, Dare to Dream Bigger, which was all about how we change the world. We change, the 7 C's of having fear-free impact based on a law-changing campaign that I just co-run for EU law. And It had been through all the processes, beta readers, editors, everything. I knew it was a really great book. And I'd been so busy with getting it finished, ready for the print deadline, that I hadn't done the inside work. I didn't realize I'd not closed the gap. I hadn't allowed myself to become the version of me that publishes the book. I'd used coping strategies to push down the inner gremlin saying, Claire, who are you to publish this? So the night before it was due to go to the printer, print run had already been paid for, would have been horrific and very expensive not to have the book show up on time at 9 o'clock that day. The night before, I deleted the manuscript. I lost it. Complete and utter. Who am I to publish this book? There was a lot of emotion in that. And I didn't just delete the manuscript. I deleted every single version of it I could find. And I deleted every backup copy in the cloud. My family would say that I was not sweetness and light that night. I slept on my own in the tent in the garden. And at around 3 o'clock in the morning, something in me just said, Claire, this is just imposter syndrome. You haven't closed that gap. You haven't done the work that allows you to become the version of you that publishes a book on how to change the world. I did that work, allowed myself to become that version of me, calmed down, did a lot of apologizing to my family, found a backup copy I'd missed, found a hand annotated version in the back of it somewhere in the drawer, made the changes, got the book to the printer. And people who've read the book say they often reread it every single time they want to make a major change in their life or add in a new project in their business or career. So if I hadn't done that work, if I'd kept on pushing on through, I would have self-sabotaged a project I'd worked on for 2 years because I hadn't taken the time to close the imposter syndrome gap, and my bridge of coping strategies was no longer enough to get me over the ravine.
Okay, well, if I'm allowed to actually put it on a label, it seems that you're speaking about the moment of realization. Earlier in our chat, I think I sensed you mentioning a little bit about a process kind of a take. Is there anything related to the process developing the imposter syndrome, similar as it happens with burnout, or is it at once? How did it go in your specific case?
So because it's something that we try not to be consciously aware of, because that's one of our coping strategies, is pretend it's not there, ignore it and hope it will go away, then it tends to suddenly jump up on people. It doesn't creep up gently because we're like fingers in ears, like la, 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 ignoring it. And then suddenly there comes a point where the bridge of coping strategies isn't enough. Maybe we've stretched a comfort zone or been asked to do something in the media or been asked to present to the board or pitch to a client. And that bridge is too narrow and it falls down the ravine. And suddenly imposter syndrome is in your face. So it often comes out and really hits people hard because we didn't realize how many coping strategies we've been using to succeed despite it. So unlike burnout, which is very much a sliding scale, imposter syndrome can suddenly come and hit you, but it's also context dependent. So you might not experience it at all most days, but for example, if a certain person is in the room in a meeting, suddenly imposter syndrome is there for you. And then once that person's gone, you can kind of calm down and your coping strategies mean you manage it fine. So it's context dependent as well as sudden onset. And this is why I encourage people, if, for example, on the scorecard, you get medium to high risk, is take action now before you need to. Because then you don't need to self-sabotage. A lot of people who've experienced imposter syndrome will turn down opportunities for years in case it comes back. So deal with it now when you don't need to. And if you're in the middle of major imposter syndrome, really, really, really deal with it now. I have strategies that I teach people that work in that moment and also as preventative while you do the deeper work to clear out the triggers that were causing it.
Got it. How is Claire nowadays different or similar to Claire back then?
So nowadays I do a lot of things that are very, very brave, I would say. Yeah, we're about to do a huge launch on our app, which has been through the beta trials. The Claire back then, there's no way she'd have done that. The Claire now is still kind of a bit scared, particularly, trolls, that kind of thing. But I take much bigger actions, and I get the absolute privilege of having more impact because I can reach more people. The Claire back then, I think she had more time to dream. Yeah, I'm going through a phase of life at the moment where there's a lot of doing, with my eldest son doing his university prep. My other two sons are both very full on with what they're doing. And I can see that life goes in phases. Yeah, once the kids leave home, which will happen in the blink of an eye, then there'll be another version of Claire. But the me right now, it's less. I mean, I've written 8 books and I haven't written one for 3 years now. And I used to write almost one a year. So the Claire right now is not in book mode. The Claire right now is in, let's create an app for the people who don't want books. Yeah. So I think it's really important as we grow and learn to be present to what we can deliver to help and make a difference right now, rather than assuming that we have to keep doing what we did in the past. And also to be able to let go. There'll be a point where I let go of the app and it flies and somebody else does the looking after it and I'll move on to the next thing. And it's about having that flexibility, that deep breath. What do I really want? How can I have most impact? What difference can I make? To know when to breathe in and when to breathe out, when to almost hustle and when to flow. Does that make sense, Gorgi?
Absolutely. Insofar it makes sense to you, it's perfect for us and for the audience too. You mentioned the app on a couple of occasions. When can we get it?
So public release is going to be in November. So what we've done is we've taken my 5-step process for clearing imposter syndrome, which was previously only available either for one-to-one clients. So I train imposter syndrome master coaches, in-house first aiders for companies. It was only available at that level or through quite an intensive course. And we've broken it down into 5-minute chunks. So you just learn one habit a week and you do one tiny thing each day that allows you to step by step to start doing the deeper work. So, starting by pressing pause on the stress, because you can't change your life when you're burning out and when you're super stressed. Then looking at practical ways to rewire the neural pathways so you can turn your inner critic into a genuine cheerleader. Then I know that one of your passions is burnout, looking at the body's addiction to adrenaline, which can lead to a lot of burnout, and how to healthily clear that. Then really looking at reclaiming your personal power. So that's resetting toxic boundaries, both with the outside world and the inside world. This is some kind of deep, limiting belief stuff, and that's sort of level deeper. And then the 5th step is all about becoming the real you, consciously creating your future. And with the app, what you do is you go through that 5-step process in those tiny, easy, high impact 5-minute chunks, and you do it 3 times. Each time just going one layer deeper, each time getting deeper insights, self-coaching, the audios, the videos, the workbooks, the strategies and the techniques. So by the time that you've spent all 3 cycles of that, you've done incredible levels of change, clearing imposter syndrome, burnout, and toxic resilience in a way that suits your diary. It's there on your phone. It's designed to be super easy and fun. And you almost won't believe the level of work that you've done. And if you then reset the scorecard, what we found is it will take some people from, say, 80% on their score down to 20%, just in 5-minute chunks every day.
And for how long? The logical question.
So how long does the change last, or how long does the change take?
Both. Let's start with take.
So the way this is designed to work, because you're clearing out the deeper triggers, the root causes of what was driving the surface level behavior with imposter syndrome or burnout or toxic resilience, you've made those changes. You no longer need those coping strategies. So that change happens. Yeah, you've closed the imposter syndrome gap. How long does it take? People start to report feeling better in as little as like 2 or 3 weeks. And the 3 rounds are designed to be done in about 6 to 9 months, depending on the speed you want to do it, whether you go in every day or every couple of days. So it's gentle change, because what most of us don't have the energy for right now is radical, massive change. It's done in a way that honors your energy levels, that makes it safe, but keeps it profound. And you've got the ability to track your progress. We've got a virtual journal in there as well. So you can make notes on any of the lessons that you've done, any of the techniques that you've done, and you're encouraged regularly to reflect at what are you doing differently? Yeah. Spot that time where you speak up with an idea in a meeting that maybe previously you'd have held back. Really celebrate the fact that you maybe gave a presentation that previously you'd have toned down. All the little signs that help us realize we're changing, that mean that you can celebrate the progress you're making every single day.
Sounds lovely. And I particularly love the name Natural Resilience Method somehow. Yeah.
It's something that's really close to my heart, because most people are doing what I would call toxic resilience, which is one of the I said there were 2 predictors for burnout in the workplace. One is imposter syndrome and one is toxic resilience. And this is that bounce back, gritted teeth, push on through, pretend you're okay, get knocked for 6 and come back the next day like nothing happened. This takes a huge toll on the body, the emotions, our psychology, our mental, emotional, physical health. Natural resilience is about becoming who you really are and calming that inner pendulum, clearing out the buttons that life used to press so you don't get knocked for 6. And if something does knock you, you can come back to that inner okayness, that inner happy, much more easily than before.
Lovely. Claire, the half an hour has flew by so quickly. I didn't even see it when it happened. With this, I want to ask, is there anything else that we should discuss, or anything else like a message that you would like to leave behind for the audience?
I'd love to share with everybody watching is, if this has resonated with you, please just take action. You don't have to read my book or take the app or anything with me, but do something. If you take the first step in the next 24 hours towards clearing imposter syndrome, towards saying, enough. Yeah, my favorite Italian word, I'm part Italian, is basta. Enough. My kids know it really well. Enough. Today is my basta moment. I am turning this ship around. I am going to take tiny steps towards a future where every day I get to close the imposter syndrome gap and become more of that version of me that has the impact that my ideas and dreams deserve. Whatever the first or next easy step is, go and take it in the next 24 hours. If you're involved in the discussions with this video, let us know what it is. We'll be your virtual cheerleaders. But above all, take the very first step in the next day, because then you've said to the future you, I'm doing something about this. And you'll be amazed at how the universe then somehow lines up to give you the support and inspiration that you need to allow yourself to become all of who you really are.
Well, it seems I wouldn't have dare add anything else more than what you just said. I would like to thank you so much for the time spent with us. To the audience, we are going to include in the description all links, references we've mentioned to Claire, to the assessment, as well to her books. So if you found the content interesting, relevant, if anything aroused your curiosity, to say it at least, let us know. If there are other topics that you would like us to cover, feel free to reach out either to Claire directly or let us know. Everything we do is focused solely on creating value, generating awareness, and ultimately helping us all as a society to live a more fulfilling and innerly balanced way of life. In line with our natural resilience and natural resources, we each one of us, each one of the audience, each one of us here on the stage has been born with. Sometimes we just need a little bit of a pocket mirror, as we tend to call it, just to bring out the best from within that we already carry in us anyway. So Claire, it has been very inspiring for me. I am right now going to make the test. Fingers crossed I don't get a high result there.
Even if you do, there are solutions. We can help.
Awesome. And if I actually took one thing away, then it is take action. So regardless whether it was through the assessment of Claire or any other internal or external indicator, better safe than sorry in this specific case. Take action. It takes only 5 minutes or sometimes only one simple sentence to tell yourself, which can be with the strength of a snowball effect. So thank you. I really hope we all achieve a better way of life. Claire, I'm looking forward to our next encounters. And please let us know once the app is live. Happy to have another chat and maybe even to run it. As you know, we are also in the app field. So happy to have another run and maybe show it to the audience and let them know how you specifically can help with this 5 minutes at time step approach to overcome the imposter syndrome.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy spending time with you, and thank you to everybody who's watched today.
Awesome. Lovely. So people, take care and see you soon. Bye-bye.